record snowfall here in the Northeast. And, you get two brothers, here in the room, and it's just like, hey, how much snow did you get? And both probably still sore from shoveling. As we welcome back defending champion. This is not his first time on the podcast, but man, we are going to get into one of my favorite subjects. Worshipful brother Cedric Jacobson. Welcome back to the Craftsman Online podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I remember you coming on in 2025, us starting to talk. You just kind of like how women fight, just drop this little, nuclear bomb seed. You're like, oh yeah, then there's always the point within a circle. And then it just germinated and exploded. I'm like, I got to get this guy back on. So here we are. And as I mentioned before, like this has been my Masonic rabbit hole. It's my bat light. It is the thing, the symbol that draws my attention. It was the first question I ever asked about Freemasonry in lodge to another brother, and was immediately told, go read a book, which is what sent me down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
How did you get to know this thing we love and know as the point within a circle? What's your story?
Yeah, I think likewise. This was the first symbol that I encountered in a lodge setting that I saw and felt connection with in the outside world. My undergraduate training is as a chemist, and so I read nerdy science books, and had read a fair about the early history of chemistry, which we know is alchemy. And the point within a circle has at its core the same symbol as the alchemical symbol for gold. And so I saw that kind of connection in it, a little twinge in the back of my brain, asked somebody a question, and received kind of an answer similar to the lecture about the point within a circle. And honestly, didn't really find satisfaction in that level. And so I was trying to dig deeper. And this was early in my Masonic journey. This was actually the first original research presentation that I put together.
Wow. And so it began.
Mm-hmm.
How many years have you been on this journey?
I mean, I think I started trying to scratch this itch in 2013,
Nice.
2014.
Okay.
And still, this is one of those things I just keep coming back to and thinking more about and more about.
I'm just curious if you feel the same way about this symbol as I do, in that I don't ever want to get a definitive answer to it. The pursuit just makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same.
What I've learned through my research is that it has unlimited explanations, because it's one of the oldest symbols that's been around since when you could first pick up a stick and draw on the dirt. That's how long this has been. So many meanings are infinite, and what it actually has meant to other people. And when I say people, I just mean broadly, like cultures and societies and ancients, like to where it is today. And you see it and you're like, oh, did I just saw what when I see lodges like my lodge here in DC, the reason that I was drawn to that lodge, let's just put it that way, was there on their outdoor sign, or on their website, instead of the square and compasses, their lodge logo is a point within a circle. And I was like, I need to visit that lodge.
I feel like it is one of those symbols that just feels like it kind of speaks to something in our lizard brain, like some deeply resonant symbol that catches our attention, and it just kind of lives on. Like once it grabs on, it won't let go.
Yeah. And I knew nothing, like you knew nothing about the point within a circle before Freemasonry. It's, and we'll kind of catch up our listener here. It's in the end of the first degree, at least in New York and in DC. I'm guessing you're shaking. It's the same way for Connecticut.
In Connecticut and Boston, in Massachusetts as well.
Okay, we're all on the same page there. But it's this profoundly fortune cookie wisdom nugget that's about a paragraph that's buried around all of this other stuff you hear that night. And if you miss it, if you yawn, it'll just skip right by, which I think most of us as EAs, we had so much going on that night. But it is one of the most profoundly esoteric beginnings of the breadcrumb trail that you will ever get, because the way that it is told is in how Masons are instructed to act as far as our conduct goes. And we're first starting to learn about these working tools that are now being introduced. Why do you feel that it's just it's a burning. I find myself being the advocate for the point within a circle. Why do you feel its explanation is very important, but yet kind of incomplete at that stage in a young Mason's career?
Yeah, this is a question that I often think about. When our Masonic ritual was originally codified, it was at a time that members of lodge, of a speculative lodge, had much more like constructed background through the trivium and quadrivium about like classical connections, and so there are many allusions in literature or in the ritual that make a connection back to this kind of broader world picture that was commonly understood at that time, and over the generations we've lost that understanding. And so perhaps at that time, you know, those the few paragraphs that we use to explain the point within a circle were enough to queue up for newly made brothers the some of the more esoteric connections within the symbol. But in the last 300 years, we've lost kind of that background knowledge. And often I think our research to explore the depths of some of these symbols is honestly kind of uncovering the past in that way.
It's interesting you say that, because we live in a time now where, I mean, we're probably the most educated we've ever been since the dawn of man. We literally have space shuttle technology in our pockets. And yet, when it comes to things like the classics, or as they would have described in some of the older terms as being learned, we're not. Like, we would walk right by a point within a circle and mistake it for just graffiti art.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating.
A lot of knowledge, but sometimes less wisdom.
So as I mentioned, my OG search for the point within a circle, the first direction was to go read a book. For somebody that hopefully is listening to this podcast and maybe is like, okay, I'm intrigued by these guys talking about this, I'm going to stop everything in my life right now and go follow what Michael and Cedric are talking about. Or they themselves have kind of been hit between the eyes with the proverbial hammer and like, yeah, you know, I want to learn a little bit more about this too. Where would you kind of start directing them on that journey if they're trying to find maybe some esoteric or hidden meanings behind this?
Yeah, I think there are kind of two directions you can go. And honestly, it's dealer's choice, which approach I take first. One is to look at Masonic authors that talk about the in this case, point within the circle, or whatever it is that itch you're trying to scratch. You know, start with Pike or an Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, kind of see a little bit more there. Then you can look into some like Masonic research journals and see what other Masonic authors or Masonic books have to say about the symbol. And that can help give you a more concrete idea of that symbol as explained in different sections of ritual, perhaps like different parts of the world. So that's one approach, is to see what Masons say about the symbol. I often, when I'm looking for deeper meaning, try to search for connections in the different mystery schools, whether that's Hermeticism, Gnosticism, looking back to the Pythagorean cult, looking more recently like Rosicrucianism, trying to find where a similar idea took hold in those places and see if there's overlap.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, for me it was YouTube. I thought you were going to say, well, there's always YouTube. And I've mentioned this before. The guy that his account I stumbled on was the Backyard Freemason. I think he lives in Montana or Wyoming. Just you see sheep grazing, just picturesque, wonderful mountain views, sunsets, you know, wind chimes blow. It's totally relaxing. And I used to watch his videos on my lunch break when I worked at a cardiology practice, and I was just in between like, oh, that's interesting. And his explanations were so, I hate to use this word, it was fun. He made history and research fun and would show a lot of the books where he was getting his ideas or his thoughts from. So that's what led me to go pick up the, you know, New York City yellow book of the Manly P. Hall's secret teachings of all, and
Yeah.
just go scanning for that one chapter where he talked about it, and then
Mhm.
try to like not turn my brain into pudding to read that. And then, as I mentioned before, I found the only piece of Albert Pike literature that I own, because it's about the same thickness as a cipher book, for those of you that know what those are. Um, and read his explanation, which went a lot more spiritual. Manly P. Hall, of course, went up to the clouds and the esoterics and the bigger picture, and
Mhm.
Pike went more to the spiritual dogma of things. And then through all of that, I started finding all of the other traditions, how Eastern traditions, and how it's evolved over time and has been around. And that's when I realized this is one of those beautiful things that you just accept. There really is no definitive answer. There's just many, which makes it so beautiful.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that at the top of the show, right? This is a symbol, or related symbols have been present in many different cultures over the last several millennia, and
Mm-hmm.
so it has meant much to different peoples. And so I agree, there's no right answer, and I think that's part of what makes it interesting. Is in addition to the surface level teachings that we receive in Lodge, I think there are a lot of different individual meanings that can reside in ourselves.
Yep. And as I told you beforehand, this is going to be the part where I turn into the audience. There's a reason why I booked this guy, because Cedric was like, hey, I'll share my presentation, which has a cool title, Solstices and Saints. Yes, we're going to get into this. And this is one area of the Point Within a Circle that is new learning for me. I have not explored this avenue, so I'm very excited to hear this. As you start your presentation, you show how the symbol, and I'm familiar with this part, the two parallel lines can represent the Holy Saints John.
Mhm.
And they kind of set up the boundary lines. But why were we using these specific figures, or why do you suggest that we chose these figures to explain a Mason's conduct?
Yeah, I think the in the ritual we learn that they sort of circumscribe our actions, and again, our forebears were much more biblically literate than we are today.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there was, again, kind of a common understanding. If you look at St. John the Baptist in Christianity, obviously, like, he is the one who is said to have baptized Christ. But if we look at his values, right, he was an ascetic. He was known for like really strict devotion, zeal. He had a lot of zeal for what I would describe as like strong moral character. And so I think in our cycle as men, um, he is one boundary point of that strong moral fortitude. Um, and I think, that pillar represents strength.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think about St. John the Evangelist, his personality in the Bible is much more one of love and loyalty and friendships. So this is a sort of like brotherly love. And so kind of not at the opposing end, but as part of our journey, that is a critical portion as well, right? The sort of that pillar representing beauty, right? The connection between
Mm.
us.
It's interesting because we can talk about this in roundabout ways,
Mhm.
because it is a public setting. But I have heard that explanation before of the Holy Saints John. I have never heard it put as you have, where they represent strength and beauty. I do like that. I've
Mhm.
seen the pillars, and depending on how your jurisdiction gets the party started, and if you know what that term means, you know what I'm talking about, like where
Mhm.
things are, you are physically represented at a few points throughout the initiatic process as the point within a circle. You just don't recognize it then,
Mhm.
because there's so much stuff going on that night. But I've never thought about them that way. And the way that you describe them, yeah, John was kind of like, the guy that lived out in the woods, very
Mhm.
man of the earth, but, deeply devout, but just kind of passionate in his own way, and the other brother, yeah, was more of the pillar of beauty as we would think of beauty. So beautiful. So then we celebrate these saints as Freemasons throughout the years during the solstice. I've always wanted to do this. It's been on my list of things to do, to go to a feast of this. Have you done the feast of the St. John's? I've yet to attend one of those.
Not recently, but I have in the past, and it is. I think it's a really moving setting. Um,
Mm,
you know, early Freemasonry, the earliest lodges were dedicated to the Holy Saints John, and it feels kind of a step back in time in a way to really celebrate those feast days.
okay. Yeah. And again, like the parallels are going to start here, which is a great way of describing the point within a circle. Is you have you being in the center of the way that these two saints conducted themselves and trying to kind of be the best
Mhm.
of both worlds. Then, of course, their holidays fall on June 24th and December 27th, the summer and the winter. Again, parallel to each other on a calendar. But we're following now this solar cycle. And
Yeah.
as you're starting to talk about in your presentation, we're going through the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. And how does this all start to tie in that whole theory and connection to the geometry of the lodge?
Yeah, we think about the geometry of lodge being the oblong square, and that the position of the worshipful master and the two wardens representing the path of the sun throughout the day. And if you've ever looked at those like time lapse photographs of the sun throughout the day, it does kind of a beautiful arc.
Mm,
And at the winter solstice, that arc is the lowest journey, and at the summer solstice, it's a higher arc as it goes down. Um, so the lodge itself is that sort of permanent shape, but the journey of the sun changes depending on where you are in our journey around the sun. And I think it likewise, our path as men feels different depending on where we are in our own season.
mm,
To go back to your question about lodge, though, I think the connection, right? The sun journeys east to west. We have the tropics are said to help define the northern boundary and southern boundary of lodge. The tropic is like the tropic line on planet Earth is the point where at the solstices, the winter and summer solstice, if you put a stick straight down in the ground, it will cast no shadow at
hmm.
solar noon. Um, so I think the geometry of the lodge has a clear connection to the sun and the sun's journey.
Okay. And it's getting me to think of Albert. I can't remember if it's Albert Mackey or Manly P. Hall. I want to lean on that it's Mackey. In one of his books, he has the diagram of like the path of kind of the celestial path that you're talking about. And then you could lay that over a lodge room floor. And if you know the steps that we take to during the degree or the natural
Mhm.
route of things, so to say, they almost kind of mimic that.
Yeah.
And this also opens up to the part where you start talking about our internal seasons as they would be with the equinox.
Mhm, mhm. So I think the equinox is important, right? Because the equinox is the halfway point between the solstices.
Mm,
Um, and if in our own seasons, right, we're moving from uh, swinging more towards that fervency and zeal, moral character, um, and the sort of opposite, uh, not opposite, but complementary love, brotherly love, affection. The equinox, right? If you look at the etymology of the word, equi means equal, and nox means night. So it's when those two sides of the coin are in equal balance.
mm.
Um, and so equinoxes are a really special time, I think, in our own seasons. It is a time of balance.
I know we talked about this earlier, how past generations were just, when it came to certain things, smarter than we are now. I wonder, though, if this whole using the point within a circle and the celestial and the rotation of the planets and all, if that was another allegory if that was maybe a visual aid for those that learned that way, or if that was just the way that people talked about things back then,
Mm.
because it's not really how we talk about things now. And I think that might make what this could be the mystery and like the trying to understand it. That's what makes this the fun part, at least for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, what is it they always say about Masonry, that it's a system of morality, like veiled in allegory.
Yeah.
Um, it is that, right? Like there is this core symbol that speaks to us, both you and I think thousands of other brothers out there. And like I said, there is a commonality in meaning, but I think it also has potential to speak to us each in different ways. And I think that is likely just as true 300 years ago as it is today.
Now, I know you mentioned you have a chemist and that science background.
Mhm.
Were you ever into astrology or the star signs or anything that was happening in the heavens?
No, is the short answer.
Okay.
Not that I'm opposed to it. It was just that's never a rabbit hole that I've gone down.
Okay, me neither. And same on that one too. But I will say I can remember how to identify the Little Dipper, and then I try to start looking for the Big Dipper because I figure if I can see the little one, maybe the big one will
Mhm.
jump out. But there's never a night now if I'm not outside and just, enjoying some time by myself and looking up at the stars that I don't think about what we're talking about right now with the point within a circle and the Holy Saints John and the meaning. And it's like, and then going back to times where it's like, wow, this is how they used to use the stars and they would sail and get around the world. Like
Mhm.
just how much the stars provided more than just pretty things to look up and a nice evening. You know what I mean?
I do. I definitely do. And I think, we were talking about the seasonality
Mm,
of life. We talked about equinoxes, but something that my brain just kind of jogged on that I forgot about. If we consider the solstices, the summer solstice, you might think like, oh, this is a time of like light and celebration and energy. Um, but the summer solstice, that's the feast day for Saint John the Baptist.
mm,
Um, and so the feast of Saint John the Baptist, I think, is important, right? Because we as Masons seek light, and that is the lightest, longest day of the year. But we should seek light with our own strict devotion and moral code and uprightness. And then the winter solstice, which is the darkest time of year, a time of deep introspection and a lot of quietude. The Feast of St. John the Evangelist, who we talked about, represents that brotherly love and loyalty, friendships, affection,
mm,
um, at a time when we need it most.
mm. And this, I'm just curious if that connection, if they were still celebrating Christmas back then, if that tradition was still in play then, or if it was just the end of the year and the start of a new one, because of the way that calendars were. Because now it has a whole deeper meaning for us to get together and have family time as we, yes, still traditionally prepare for the colder days ahead, which I don't understand why people sing the song Let It Snow, because none of us want it, really.
Not after days like today.
No. But I could see why that time is it's in the Christian faith, they're warming up and they're getting ready for that moment.
Mhm.
And it's really in the heart of all of those things happening. So, and again, another thing that's directed by the stars. So maybe
Yeah.
something for another episode. Looking forward to that one. So back to your presentation, which again,
Mhm.
thank you. Worshipful brother Cedric Jacobson provided the Saints and Solstice, and I was just like, wow, I'm in heaven with this one. Because it's a podcast, we're going to have to use our words here, but you have several historic images in your presentation of
Mhm.
deity using a compass to circumscribe the earth, which I wish during ritual you were able to do that and show it because it would really kind of reinforce that with the brother.
Yeah.
But how does that act of the point within a circle, in your mind, kind of mirror the act of creation itself?
Yeah. I think like the point within the circle is what you get when any of us that used a compass in high school geometry to draw a circle, you get the circle, but you also get that little dot or hole in the center, right? Like
Hmm.
you can't use a compass without creating a point within the circle. And that idea of a creator, a god, or depending on your faith, whatever the grand architect that you subscribe to is, that vision of God the creator using a compass to create is an ancient one and a fairly common one. And I think we can see that in esoteric teachings, like in the Pythagoras school and Rosicrucianism, where the point within the circle represents creation. So that idea of creation with the compass and point within a circle, they are different sides of the same coin.
Yeah, that's the part I loved in your presentation, because I'm like, okay, I do recall some stuff from that Albert Pike book that
Yeah.
I read, because he gets into that as well, and that's what I love about the flexibility about this, because as you get into that, then the alchemist, the chemist in you comes out, because you start talking about the symbols that I go, oh man, I kind of remember how to do them in HTML, but I don't know what they mean. We get into sulfur, salt, mercury. You
Mhm.
start discussing their relationships to the planets. How can you suggest? I never suggest alchemy to any brother, because I myself don't understand it, so I wouldn't want to put, it's like advanced math, it's like I stay away
Yeah.
from that. But how does alchemy help somebody understand the point, as you're talking about the residue, and the idea as you put out, that it's your own essence, your own soul?
Yeah. When we learn about alchemists in our youth, we at least I thought, until I read more about it, that these were people, they were
You
the
could,
tinfoil hat people of their time,
oh, come on, say it. They're the people that could turn pencil lead into gold. That's what we
Right.
all heard, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And like, yes, there was a quest to transmute and combine matter to create new matter.
Hmm.
Um, but at its core, alchemy really was a belief system, and the goal was to transmute yourself, our leaden state, into a pure light gold state.
Hmm.
And so through proper application of heat and other processes, right, through proper application of um, forging ourselves, we can arrive at a place of ascendance.
Yep.
And that's really what the alchemists believe. And it's the spiritual led into gold.
Now, how much of this, because again, this alchemy is is it fair to say it's like one of the grandfathers of like modern science? Okay.
I would certainly say so. Yeah.
Okay. Whew, good. Because you shaking was good, but for a podcast,
Yes.
for the alchemy police come and haul me away.
Yep. Mhm, mhm.
Um, so I'm just curious, because every scientist I know, man, I love them because they are so into what's the data, what can be proven. I love the scientific theory. When you were getting into alchemy, was there a little bit of a doubt in you, going, how much of this is quote unquote the magic, the superficial, the spiritual side of alchemy?
Yeah, I think originally it feels a little frou-frou. I'm reading a book about the history of chemistry, right? And you're
Mm,
like, what is all of this? Um, like I was viewing the symbols and the shorthand as sort of a coded way. This was at a time before modern sciences had really evolved, so people were very protective of their secrets, and so symbols were used to like hide your own research ideas. And so I was very intensely curious about that. And I remember reading some chapters and I was like, I don't really see it.
mm.
The idea of the spiritual led into gold. But as that as that idea appeared again and again and again in different resources that I read about alchemy, it was clear that it was not just one author's opinion, that
Mm.
was sort of deeply uh, imbued in the approaches of alchemy. And
Did
so, yeah,
did your forehead start to get sore from all the slapping, or?
yeah. Sometimes being told once or twice is not enough, and you need to
Mm.
hear it 9, 10, or 11 times.
Yeah, yeah. No, I sometimes find myself in it. That's the fun of doing this independent research, as a Mason, is it challenges. We're told in the first degree that, our belief system is going to get challenged. And we're not
Mhm.
just talking about like belief in greater beings. It's everything, like things that you didn't even want to think to know to be different. It's
Yeah.
going to be challenged. I gotta ask, like, with all the research you did, I mean, you went into the signs, the symbols, the saints. What was kind of the most personal, rewarding part for you? What was the juicy fat on the meaty bone for you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I I think for me it was thinking about the connections between the saints and their position within a calendar year and the seasons as we experience them in the northern hemisphere. Um, and then thinking about sort of the Earth's path around the sun, feeling similar to like my own path
Mm-hmm.
in that yearly cycle. And that's something I think about often, especially in this like dark time of year that we're starting to pull out of now. Um, that this, we're now in a time where the light is growing and the darkness is shrinking,
Yep.
um, and that there is a lot to look forward to.
I also look at it. You were going exactly where I was going. The thing that it gave me was hope.
Mhm.
Because when I hear about the point within a circle, my favorite part is just learning how the other people, whether they're still around or they become sadly extinct or we just don't know what happened to them, um, how they were either separated by land masses or bodies of water or just even times in the history of mankind, how they all came to a certain symbol as a way of recognizing, establishing, and understanding and defining something
Yeah,
that they figured it out in a way to explain and pass it down through generations and until whenever, And here I am way late on that loop. And I can sit here and benefit from this and go, okay, if we were able to figure out something then and accept it as a natural truth, then
yeah,
there's hope with all the division that we have now that there's things that someday we'll be able to accept as a natural truth.
yeah. I agree.
So all right, sorry, that was the heavy part of the show. But that's what I love about this because one of the best friendships that I have in Freemasonry is a brother who literally has, I look at my thumb every time I think of a point within a circle because he has tattooed on his right hand a point within a circle. We were
Mm.
literally standing around a bar after a Masonic meeting, and I was like, dude, what is up with your tattoo? That is how our friendship immediately started right
Yeah,
there. He started talking about it, and I was like, anybody that's going to put that on their body, I need to know this person. And that's what this symbol means to me. It's not just trying to unlock some mystery, it's all the connections, which is what the symbol is all about, right? Us
yeah.
being around. And yeah, it's when you talk about mystical, that's the word that I would use to describe how I feel about the point within a circle. I don't know if you get all geeked up like I do about it.
I do. I mean, here I am 13 years later, still kind of pulling at the threads,
Mm.
looking for more connections. Yeah.
And this was the question that like a brother that you were going through Masonic education or degree proficiency asked you about the point within a circle, and you're like, hold on, let me write this down in my black book of thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out like, well, if it's similar to gold, what does that mean? What's the connection here? Yeah. And
Hmm.
jotted it down and started pulling at the threads.
Okay. So let's do a little Masonic education because this is the part that I feel bad for people that work with me, but this is what you get. I tell them, like, look, I'm going to get you to where you need to be with the proficiency. But if you want a little bonus, like, I'm going to help you out with this too.
Mhm.
So the point within a circle gets introduced in the entered apprentice degree. This is where we start to get some explanations of the square and the compass, which are the two big uh, Masonic symbols that are most recognizable to most people. It's the square and
Mhm.
compass. There's a letter G. Usually it's on the outside of our buildings.
Yeah.
And we start trying to make connections with the point and how the square is supposed to help square our actions. And how do you use the point within a circle to communicate those values?
Yeah. We earlier in the show we're talking about the what drew you to your current lodge is seeing the point within the circle outside the building rather than the more traditional square and compasses. I think in our last conversation where we talked about the letter G, we talked about how when you use a compass to draw a point within a circle, the logical next step from a geometric standpoint is to create a square. Like this is the way that operative Masons tried their square. And so to me, honestly, the symbols of square and compass are one and the same with this point within the circle. And I think about the parallel lines, the two Saints John, those are really that question of, we talked about our life as being very cyclical. Knowing that when I circle back to that idea again, or that experience again, or that interaction again, the question that I go to bed asking myself is, will I feel that I have acted as a just and upright man? Because things always come back, and I at night I genuinely sit and ask myself questions, kind of self-interrogate about my interactions and how I acted that day.
Interesting. That's so the presentation that I give on a lodge, on about a point within a circle to a lodge, honestly doesn't really talk about the point within a circle until like the last 15 minutes. And it's like point within a circle 101. The whole presentation is a walkthrough of a similar lodge in Monterey, California, that when my brother was visiting out there, and my younger brother, who I don't know if you've got a friend or a family member who's like this, but doesn't want to be a Mason right now because he doesn't have time. But yeah, anytime he passes a Masonic building, bro has to snap a picture of it on his phone and text it to me.
Yeah.
So I was literally assigned, along with the senior deacon of my mother lodge, to do a presentation on the point within a circle. And we were going to give counter viewpoints on it or whatever. Sure. And then I get this text message from my brother of this lodge in Monterey. And he's like, dude, I'm visiting Monterey. I saw this Masonic lodge. I sent this to you. And that was their symbol on the outside of the building, was the point within a circle. So I ended up reaching out to them. Long story short, the worshipful master, this was before Zoom was even a thing, you did the old, here, we'll FaceTime. And he took me in and like walked me around and was like showing me all of the art inside of the lodge room. And I'm like, this is amazing. The point within a circle is everywhere in here. Like, Are you the point within a circle? Like, what's the story of this? And of course, like a real good Mason, they didn't know their story. They're like, oh, well, the guy that did all this artwork, I would love to introduce you to that brother. And I'm like, yes, but he's not here today. And he's like, unfortunately, he passed away. And I'm like, oh, well, now let me go research this guy's story. And I was like, dude, the rabbit hole just went on for on. That's the entire presentation. It's at the very end where I say, hey, the point within a circle, how do I explain this? Well, as we're taught when we're younger, there's the golden rule, right? But I also use it as like the point within the circle to me is that relationship that you have with others and recognizing it, especially today.
Yeah.
I think this lesson became extremely important during COVID. And now I really want guys to think about what I'm about to say, is that not every day is your point directly in the circle. Some days it's good days, some days it's bad days. And your circle isn't always the same size. I look at the circle as like people's personalities. You have introverts, you have extroverts, right? There's some guys that have tiny little circles. They don't want to deal with other people and they want to stay. And it's being able to recognize that when we're out, whether it's in another lodge or visiting another office or traveling or whatever, like being able to see that in other people before I engage a conversation with them and just respecting them and giving them the right space or whatever you want to say. Like that's been the point within a circle lesson that hits me almost on a daily basis. And I also think like days when I kind of snap at my wife for when she asks one of her 1,000 really important questions, but at the wrong time. I'm like, probably could have handled that one a little bit better, and it's that reflection to what you're saying. It's the rubber band that comes back to me and I'm like, point within a circle. So
I think that what you're speaking to resonates with kind of an ongoing theme of our conversation tonight. And that is the point within the circle is a little different for everybody.
Yeah.
Not only it's how it resonates with us, but our own point in our own circle.
Yep. And that's why the answer in the application is absolutely infinite. I also kind of think that that's kind of the beauty in the disguise of it, and that it's really just a paragraph that seems to be just tucked away, a point within a circle of all the other stuff you're going to hear that night. And that
Mhm.
if you're really going down the rabbit hole, well, if you're really doing the search to find it, and I found it by mistake. It was in New York State. We refer to that long lecture that comes after you become an entered apprentice. We call that
Mhm.
well, it's the historical lecture, but internally we call it the hysterical lecture, just to have
Mhm.
some fun. And the brother that has to give it, it's just like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
how lodges are situated, Moses, the this, the that.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
there's this. So the master had broken up that whole
Mm.
lecture into sections and had assigned it to all the officers to carry a few paragraphs, because the brother that specializes in that wasn't going to be able to make lodge the
Mm.
meeting. So instead of just knocking the tracks off the entire degree, we thought we'd do some patchwork. So that's how I got in. I would have never really read that in a ritual book because I had no desire to learn the
Yeah.
historical lecture,
Yeah.
and it would have been tucked away forever for me. So fate, I don't know. Coincidence, but I was drawn to it, and then once I found it, I have just carried that forever. And
Mm.
I get so excited when I get a chance to talk with somebody or hear somebody's ideas about it, like yours, because I would have never really thought about the alchemical or the alchemy uh, attachment to it, unless I would have
Mhm.
gone and read a book about that. But it wouldn't have been appealing to me. So it was
Yeah.
interesting to hear the thoughts that you have. Um, you do get into kind of a little traditional observant masonry, and I would expect that from a guy from a research lodge.
Sure.
um, when you start getting into the point within a circle and the division of the world and kind of breaking up the continents of Asia, Europe,
Mhm.
and Africa, and this is where we kind of might start losing people because this can get really, really heady. But you know, as a certain point, do you kind of look at like the point within a circle, at least for Freemasonry? It's kind of supposed to be our universal map?
I think so. Um, if we consider what we've talked about, the seasonality or the cyclical nature of our life, um, I think for a lot of us it does pretty neatly map onto a calendar year, um, just because the amount of daylight has such a significant impact on our own uh, mental interactions in the world. Um, I think that it is a map for our spiritual life, in that even in the times of most light, there should be strong character and that strict devotion to oneself and one's values. Um, it's kind of girding your loins, because at the peak of light, we know things are not going to stay that
Mm,
way forever.
okay.
Um, and
It's
then
interesting you hit that point. I don't want to interrupt you, but
no, no, please.
it's just burning for me to say this because this is the part that I feel kind of gets hidden. And I'm just going to weave my way around so I don't completely quote ritual word for word. But we
Sure.
talk about, as you're saying, like if we kind of listen to that inner guide and follow our values and the morals that we're supposed to be ingrained in us, and we stay within our circle, not within our social circle, but our circle of being us, our if we're true to ourselves, then we can never err in life.
Mhm.
We can never make big mistakes. Do you really believe that? Do you find that to be true?
I think were it possible for us to completely hold ourselves within bounds, then
Mm,
yes. But we are human and we are flawed. Um, and so the point within the circle is, in my opinion, kind of aspirational. We
mm,
and that is, I think, an even more important take. Like, no one is perfect. Only divinity is perfect, right? There's an ancient custom, I think, out of Persia, where craftsmen never make anything perfect, because anything perfect uh, is an insult to God, the Creator, right? And so,
hmm.
like, we are imbued with imperfection, but the fact that we recognize our imperfection and our shortcomings, but then you try to do better the next time we come around in that circle, I
Yeah.
think that it is not appropriate for us to expect perfection.
Right. No, I mean, Here we go into a really deep, heady discussion, but completely agree with you because I was thinking every time I go to New York City, it fascinates me. I always ask, how many people live here now? It's usually like 5 million, 6, 11 million, whatever the number is. I'm like, wow, like you could literally meet somebody one time and then statistically never see them again in your life if you've lived there in your entire lifetime.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, they live in your building or whatever. But I'm just saying, like the random occurrences, man, it's crazy when you think about that. So, to
Mhm.
your point, like, what is life? Life is just a daily practice, and I
Mhm.
think part of it is that having that point within a circle lesson. If you've sat through it and you're like, okay, I get this. I'm going to try to live by this way. Like, this is a code to me now. It's not recognizing, and hopefully through repetition you recognize before you get to the moment of impact that you're about to do something wrong, but
Yeah.
it's recognizing after it happens that you could have been better, and let's try again next time a little bit
Mhm.
harder. Yeah, I think that was a really important point that you made there, brother. Like, love that one.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that sort of introspection is what speaks to me about this symbol, right? Like we all want to find our center and our circle in the real world, and that is what we aspire to do. You mentioned New York City, that you might not see that person again, and I think if you this is going to get a little sciencey for a second. I'm trying to think how to say this.
Go for it. I'm ready. Just no
We
math, please.
we typically think, like, if you picture the Earth's movement around the sun, most of us picture that thing that we learned in like late middle school, early high school, where it's like, here's the sun, it's there, and the Earth goes around in this circle, almost perfect circle. But in reality, that's not right, because that's called the heliocentric view, with the sun at the center. The sun is also orbiting around galactic central point in the Milky Way galaxy, right? So it's moving. So the path of the Earth in reference to the center of the Milky Way is not a nice, happy little circle. It's shaped more like a helix. And so you aren't going to be in that same place with that same person again, right? But you might be in a same relative circumstance, with a similar another person in a similar circumstance, where you have that opportunity to be better and act in a way that you aspire to be.
Yeah, interesting. I've never heard the explanation. It's more of like a bullet or rifle, just zipping through. Then, yeah, that's And life is like, and again, you could draw the two parallel lines, and it could just follow, and you could see the tracer. Oh man, that's awesome. All right. I know we talked about just doing this for an hour, and we're close to our time, and
Sure.
I'll get you out of here on this question, brother Cedric. I think this is a good one to go out on. That if our listener is sitting here going, whew, I never had anybody break it down like this to me in my lodge before, or nobody taught. Now I'm struggling to find my own center or my own point in this chaotic world that we live in. What's the one piece of advice that you would offer our listener on that one?
Yeah, I think holding space for introspection, whether that's, for me, it's typically first thing in the morning and last thing before I go to bed. I view it as sort of a check-in, check-out mentality. I know for many of us, we get that itch to pull out our smartphone and scroll a little bit, look at the news, look at the email, look at whatever. But I really try to intentionally take a few minutes just with myself and not let the world outside distract me from myself. And that is something that I found really advantageous for me.
I know I sent you a lot of questions. We didn't get to all of them tonight because you did such a good job. You pulled in thoughts to all of them. But was there anything that you had as a note that you wanted to hit up that I didn't ask the right question to get to that point so you could make it?
I'm just peeking at my notes here.
It's all good. It's all good. I want to capture as much of that golden light that I can get here.
No, I think I've really enjoyed the conversation. I hit the big ideas from my perspective of the point within the circle, and I really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah. I got to say it's the same. I love having guests on the show because it would be really boring for the listener for me to just ramble for 30 minutes. But I love the exchange part. And I got something from you tonight, which is what the Point Within a Circle to me is always supposed to be about. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great to chat again.